Hi everyone, and welcome to another CLO tutorial. We'll be covering all the tools in the 3D window and their functions. Let's begin with the basics on how to navigate in the 3D window. In this tutorial, I'll be demonstrating navigation using a 3-click mouse. However, you have the option to change your preferences by going to Settings, User Settings, View Controls, and find the drop-down window in the top right corner. Right-click and hold the cursor to rotate around your avatar. Use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out, and hold the scroll wheel down to pan around the window. Use a combination of these three controls to navigate around. You can use the numerical keys as shortcuts for standard views, such as front, 3/4, side, top, back. If you ever find yourself lost in the 3D window, just hit 2 on your keyboard to bring you back to the frontal view. Now that we know the basics of navigating, we can move on to the 3D toolbar. The first tool is the simulation button, which is regularly used while working in CLO. The simulation button applies gravity within the 3D window, which allows your garments to sew together, drape, and apply edits. Hit the spacebar key as a shortcut to activating simulation and turning it off. When the downward arrow is blue, that means that simulation is currently active, and off when the icon is grayed out. Don't forget to turn off simulation whenever you're not using it, as it will slow down the program while working in it. Click and hold your cursor to expand the window to select additional simulation types. Complete simulation tends to take more time to calculate and uses more CPU, but expresses a more accurate drape of fabric. Complete nonlinear is mostly used for expressing stretchy material realistically. The simulation icon turns red when simulation is on and the simulation type is set to complete or complete nonlinear. You can use the Select Move tool to select pattern pieces and grab garments while simulation is applied. Patterns will be highlighted in yellow when selected. Hold Shift to select and deselect multiple patterns. When making a selection while simulation is off, click on a pattern piece to activate the gizmo. Use the gizmo to precisely control movement of one or more pieces. The default gizmo coordinate is set to screen coordinate. However, you can change your preferences by locating Preferences and Expand Gizmo. Utilize the gizmo when arrangement points do not offer enough precision. The axis of the gizmo depends on your viewing angle. A different viewpoint will alter the direction of movement. The location of the pattern or object when it is selected becomes the axis of rotation. Click the yellow square to freely move patterns. To hide the gizmo while maintaining your selection, press the Escape key. Hold Ctrl and A as a shortcut to select all patterns in the 3D window. Click anywhere in the 3D window background to deselect all patterns. Left-click on a garment and hit F on your keyboard to zoom into your selection. Your axis of rotation will now be at this point. Hit any of the numerical keys to reset this view. Use the Mesh tool to grab and move a selected portion of a garment's mesh by marking over a selection. It can be used while simulation is on or off. Selected portions will show up as a green color. Subtract a selection by holding Ctrl and add selections by holding Shift. To deselect, simply click anywhere in the 3D window. Double-click on a pattern edge to select the whole edge. The Mesh tool is particularly handy to fix any undesired garment collision. As you can see, the hem of the leggings have collided with the avatar. To fix this, I start by marking over the selection I wish to move and pull the mesh out. Doing this with simulation on makes it easier to see my edit in real time. Reselect any remaining mesh and adjust so the leg lays correctly onto the avatar. On this other leg, the collision is much more severe. For situations like these, it's much easier to make a selection to correct by hiding the avatar. You can hide the avatar by locating the avatar display in the vertical toggle menu and deselect Show Avatar. Once I make my selection, I'll bring up my avatar again so I know how far I need to pull the mesh out. I select the remaining mesh to finish my edits. Similar to the mesh tool, use the pin box tool by marking selections you wish to pin. Click and drag over an area to apply pins. Pins will appear as red dots. Hold Ctrl and marquee over areas to remove pins from the selection, and hold Shift while you marquee to add a selection. Double-click the edge of a garment's mesh to select the whole edge. Right-click on pins for an option window. You can delete individual pin selections or delete altogether. Hitting backspace while selecting pins works as well too. Click and hold the pin box tool icon in the 3D toolbar to change to a lasso selection. To create individual pins, switch back to the Select Move tool and hold the W key while you left-click on your garment. Applying precision pins have numerous functions to help you control your garment. I can grab and arrange pins with the Select Move tool freely while simulation is on. Pins are quite useful when styling garments as well, such as this example you see here, where I control a pin using the gizmo to wrap a scarf easily around the avatar. Use the Fold Arrangement tool for anything from folding collars, cuffs, or hems. For this collar, it's important to have an offset internal line from the collar seam to fold. When folding, zoom and select the appropriate arrow and fold the pattern just enough to retain its fold. Do the same for the other side. It tends to be a bit easier to fold collars if they are symmetrical sides as opposed to a whole collar piece. Folding with the Fold Arrangement tool will automatically apply fold angles onto the internal lines to retain folds when you turn on simulation. If I want to fold the sleeve hem, notice this time I'm moving the red arrow. Just make sure you select the appropriate arrow based on the direction you wish to fold. As of Close 4.2 release, you can now edit sewing in the 3D window. Use the Edit Sewing tool to view, select, and edit sewing arrangements. Use segment sewing to sew two segments together. Simply left-click on two segments and match notches to create sewing arrangement. If the sewing arrangement is properly sewed, the sewing lines that appear will be straight, connecting the two sides. Always check that your notches are aligned on segments. Here I demonstrated crossing the notches, which you can see how the sewing lines appear. To fix this, I can revert back to the Edit Sewing tool and right-click on the sewing arrangement and select Reverse Sewing. Click and hold the segment sewing icon to select end-to-end segment sewing. Use this function in order to sew multiple segments to each other. As I hover my cursor over each side seam, you can see that each side is split into two separate segments. Start by selecting the segments of one of the sides and hit the Enter key to complete the first half. Then select the segments on the other side and press Enter to complete sewing arrangement. I'm going to do the same for the other side. Seems like I forgot to sew the undersleeve seam, so I'll switch back to the default segment tool and sew them together. Use the Freeze Sewing tool to create sewing lines bypassing points and establishing the start and end freely. Click the beginning point of the sewing line, drag the mouse in the desired direction, then double-click to end the first sewing line. Do the same for your second sewing line. Again, you should be mindful of your sewing notches. If I begin sewing on the top of the armhole and end at the bottom, I'll need to do the same on the sleeve. The direction of the notches doesn't matter as long as the sides are consistent. For this sleeve, I'm going to demonstrate what we call one-to-multiple sewing, where I sew the entire sleeve cap to both sides of the armholes. Once I do that, I hold Shift and start and end my sewing relationships on both sides. Again, I'll follow the same sewing path, going from the front of the armhole and end it in the back. Once I let go of the Shift key, my sewing arrangement is completed. This is a faster way to sew that also works with the segment sewing tool. Click and hold the icon to select M to N free sewing option. M and N represent variables, which mean multiple to multiple sewing, as in multiple segments. This way I can sew the collar pieces onto the neckline in one sewing arrangement. I'm going to start sewing my neckline, then hit enter to end my first side. Then I'll start and end the collar and once more pressing the enter key to complete sewing. While sewing the collar, I seem to run into an issue where I'm unable to end my selection at the end of the pattern. If you happen to find yourself in a similar situation, don't worry, as this is an easy fix. For now, I'm just going to end the selection as close to the end as I can. It seems like the same issue occurs on this other one. Now I'm going to switch back to my Edit Sewing tool where I can adjust my sewing arrangement by selecting the point and moving it to the edge. Finally, I can turn on simulation to apply sewing. Use this function to visualize fit adjustments by tacking temporarily or to express fabric manipulations. This can be a helpful tool to use while doing an initial drape of your garments. Use Tack on Avatar to tack directly onto your avatar. You can also use the Tack tool to express fabric manipulations or gathering, just to name a few. Sometimes when importing a DXF pattern into CLO, the patterns will come in unarranged and overlapping, such as my window here. Organize your flat patterns in the 2D window in order to reflect that arrangement in the 3D to best help you understand a garment's construction. Select Reset 2D Arrangement to reflect the placement in the 3D window. Once you do that, you can now efficiently begin to arrange patterns onto the avatar. Always organize your patterns if necessary, and save the DXF to maintain that same order. Reset 3D Arrangement will return arrangement of all or selected patterns back to pre-simulation state if the patterns were arranged using the avatar's arrangement points. Patterns will not retain placement if you manually position them using the gizmo, for instance. Simply select the tool to reset arrangement and apply simulation to fix the garment. Also, you have the option to reset selected patterns by right-clicking on them and selecting the Reset 3D option. You can use this function to fix drape collision of your garment or to help style your outfit. I'll reset the arrangement of the hoodie patterns so that once I resimulate, it will drape over the head. Use circumference avatar tape to create a circumference marking that you can measure. Hold Shift to activate guides to ensure your measurement is aligned. Left-click once to begin, then click once more to establish your circumference. You can adjust your angle from here. Click again to end tape measure. Now I'll use the Attach to Avatar tape to attach tape onto my circumference marking. I can utilize this function to stabilize the pattern while I draft and drape a garment. Simulate to apply sewing and adjust the fabric along the circumference line. Use the linear avatar tape tool to improve fit accuracy by creating shoulder lines to secure to. Oftentimes while working on a garment, it tends to shift around. This way it ensures the garment is laying onto the avatar correctly. Once I finish drawing the lines, I'll use the Attach to Avatar tape tool and select both the shoulder seam of the garment and the avatar tape to attach to. Now when I try to tug onto the garment, it retains its fit. Click this icon to play an animation file applied to your avatar. If you don't have an animation applied, simply locate the motion folders in your library window and select the matching avatar in your workspace. Turn simulation on and select play motion to animate your avatar. Use this tool to draw lines directly onto your 3D garment. Left-click to begin drawing your line and double-click to finish. Be sure that when creating your line that you start and finish on a seam line. To create curve points, hold Shift while drawing a line. Switch to the Edit 3D Pen Garment tool to adjust points and refine style lines if necessary. Right-click on the line to open the option window. Here, I'll select Symmetric Cut and Sew, meaning the line will convert to a seam line while maintaining sewing, and is duplicated to both sides of my symmetrical pattern. Drawing 3D style lines are a quick and effective way to design your garments. This tool works great for drawing style lines or shapes that overlap seam lines as well. For this back yoke I'm creating, I'll hold Shift to activate guides to ensure that my lines are drawn straight. Use the 3D Line Avatar tool to draw lines directly onto an avatar and extract patterns. I'll start by drawing the center front of my pattern. Left-click to begin line while holding Shift to activate guides in order to draw my line straight. Hold Ctrl to create curve points. Finish the line by clicking on the start point. Make sure the pattern you draw out is a closed shape. After that, I can include a seam line by starting and ending on the edge of my pattern lines. Now I'll continue to draw out my back bodice shape starting on the points I drew out in the front. If the 3D lines share a seam line, CLO will recognize this and automatically apply sewing once we extract the patterns. I'll add a seam line to the back too. Switch to the Edit 3D Line Avatar tool to adjust lines if needed or to delete. Right-click on a line to access some more options. Once you've finished drawing out your lines, find the Flatten tool and hover over your drawn shapes. Your drawn shapes will illuminate in blue and turn yellow as you select them. Click on the shapes and press the Enter key to extract 2D patterns. You'll see these newly created patterns pop up in the 2D window where you can continue to edit and refine. Here, I'm going to symmetrically duplicate my patterns so that the other half will appear onto my avatar. I can now finish off this top by adding sewing to the center front and back seams. The Edit Texture tool allows you to modify a fabric's grain line and print placement, as well as scaling and rotating prints. Select the tool and click on your garment. This vertical arrow is your fabric's grain line. Use the gizmo in the top right to rotate your print. You can hold Shift for guide locks. Select this diagonal line here and slide your cursor to scale the print. These other two lines will stretch the width and the height of the print. Let's move on to the Graphic 3D Pattern tool. Use this tool to express garment details such as placed prints, embroideries, or logos. Simply select the Graphic 3D Pattern icon and navigate your folders to find a graphic you wish to import. Click onto the pattern you wish to place your graphic on, and the Add Graphic window will come up. You can specify your desired dimensions here, or click OK and resize the graphic on the garment later. Use the Transform Graphic tool to resize graphics by clicking on it and using the arrow guides to scale. Hover your cursor to the edge of the guides to rotate graphic. To delete graphic, right-click on it and select Delete, or simply select the graphic and hit the backspace key. Use the Button tool to create buttons and the Buttonhole tool to create buttonholes. Let's start by using the Buttonhole tool. Left-click onto the garment to add a buttonhole. Select the Edit button tool and click onto the buttonhole and copy and paste. I'm using the shortcut Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V. You can see a preview of the copied buttonhole in gray. Now right-click at the desired placement to access the paste window, where you can specify the intervals between buttonholes and the number of them. Select all buttonholes with the Edit button tool and right-click for the Options window. Select Duplicate as Button to Symmetric Pattern. This will automatically add buttons to the other side of the placket, matching the placement I made for these buttonholes. If I want to fasten these buttons, I'm going to pull the placket with my buttonholes slightly forward over the buttons, as this will prevent collision between the plackets. I can now select the Fasten Button tool, first selecting the button and then the corresponding buttonhole to close them. Simulate to apply changes. If I decide to unbutton them, go back to the Fasten Button tool and simply click on the button again and the lock icon will unlock, separating the button from the buttonhole. Create and express zippers quickly and easily by using the Zipper tool. Start by opening the center front of the garment, delete the sewing, and briefly simulate the garment to open up the front. Select the Zipper tool and click to start and double-click to end the zipper. Do the same for the other side. You'll see the zipper sew lines appear. Simulate once more for the zipper teeth to attach. You can also style the zipper by selecting and holding the zipper head with the Select Move tool. Drag the head to your desired position and simulate to apply the change. Use the Piping tool to add piping along garment seam lines. Select the Piping tool and left-click to start and double-click to end piping. You can change the fabric applied to the piping by locating its properties in the property editor. You can only apply fabric currently in your object browser. Use the Edit Piping tool to edit piping length and right-click on it to open the Options window. Easily create bindings along pattern outlines. Select the Binding tool and click once to start and finish binding. Switch to the Edit Binding tool to adjust its properties. Apply simulation to update changes. Here in the property editor, you can specify whether you want the binding to be under or over. You can change the fabric applied to it, and specify the width. Press 3D garments to flatten bulge seam lines when more than 2 layers are sewn together. Notice the rounded seam lines on both the collar and lapel. To smooth out these seams, I'm going to select the Press tool and click on each layer. Simulate to apply changes and watch the seam lines flatten out. You can better see the difference when comparing to the collar on the other side where I didn't press. Enhance or lower the resolution of garments. Use the high-res function to enhance your garments by expressing more realistic and accurate drape. This outfit is currently set to a particle distance of 20, which is the default setting for working projects. When I click on the high-res icon, its property window pops up informing all the properties it will change. One of these default settings changes the particle distance down to 5. For a more in-depth tutorial on all these settings, watch our Enhancing the Quality of Garments for Rendering video, where I go through each of these settings in detail. I'll provide you with this link in the description below. I'll select OK and activate simulation to apply changes. Give it a moment to update the drape of the garments. You can immediately see the improvement in quality of the drape, giving the outfit a much more realistic look. You'll utilize the high-res garment tool typically before you intend to render an image. Select low-res garment to revert the project back to an optimal working state. This one over here allows you to create your own custom resolution properties. All you have to do is change your outfit to a desired property. I'll set the particle distance to 7 to demonstrate. Then all you have to do is click the camera icon to save that setting. If I go back to 20 particle distance and select it again, you can see that it will revert back to 7. Use the linear garment measure tool to measure length. Select Edit Garment Measure tool to view measurements or hit backspace or right-click to delete. Use the Circumference Measure tool to measure the circumference of your garment. Switch back to the Edit Garment Measure tool and right-click on the line to select various options. If I want to ensure the hem of this dress is even, I'll select the Cut option and delete the excess pieces. Thank you all again for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe for more tutorial content. See you next time.